You and I are watching the World Cup final, Nigeria versus France. So I'm sitting here saying that Nigeria will win this thing this year. And you are looking at me like, if she mad, there is no way Nigeria is going to win. France will win. Now, who is right? Neither of us know. The tournament still has to finish. Now, what we are doing is we are guessing, we are betting, we are just making a hunch based on some signs that we've seen. Now, that right there is what a hypothesis is all about. And by the end of this video, you will be able to know what a hypothesis is. There's two main types of hypothesis and even type 1 and type 2 error. So let's go. A hypothesis is a tentative statement of which its validity is usually unknown. The key word here is tentative. You are not certain. You are just making a guess based on something you've read, maybe from a previous paper or an observation or from your clinical experience. Now, if you still don't understand, let's go back to the World Cup analogy. Now, I'm saying Nigeria will win, maybe based on something I've seen. Maybe France lost their key striker to an injury, and also maybe Nigeria has been winning. So I made my guess based on those signs. But the thing is, the tournament still has to end, and until the final whistle blows, it's just a hunch, it's a guess. So in a research methodology, it's the same thing that happens. You've read the literature, you've seen the patterns, you observed, you have a reason for your guess, but you haven't tested it yet. And that's exactly what makes it a hypothesis. It is tentative until your data speaks. Testing a hypothesis have three steps. The first one is constructing it. There is no how, there is no way you can test a hypothesis without constructing one. So maybe you are going to construct it based on previous literatures or what you've observed. You just have to form the statement before testing it. So in our World Cup example, the first step is simply you and I making prediction before the tournament even begin. Now step 2 is collecting appropriate evidence. Now this is where your chapter 3 kicks in. This is where your study design kicks in. This is where you collect your data, you organize your data, you clean it and keep it ready for analysis. And it's the same for our World Cup example. Before we know who is going to win, the World Cup has to be played, goals has to be scored, results has to be announced before we can know who is going to win. Step 3 is analyzing the evidence and drawing your conclusion. Now the final whistle blows. Nigeria played France. Who won? You are looking at your result at this stage and thinking, was my prediction right or wrong? Now, it is same in research. This is the point where you analyze your data using SPSS or Starter or any other tool that you are comfortable using. Then you go back to your hypothesis and ask, does my data support this hypothesis or not? That is hypothesis testing. There is nothing more complicated than that. There are two types of hypothesis, and the first one is the null hypothesis. Now, the null hypothesis is usually what you believe in, but it is stated in a negative way. So we call it hypothesis of no difference. Now let's shift the World Cup example slightly. Instead of predicting who is going to win the cup, let's say you are a researcher asking a different kind of question. Does playing on home soil gives a team advantage? Your null hypothesis would be there is no difference in performance between teams playing on home soil and teams playing away. So you can see the negativity right there. The thing is, if I personally believe that there is home advantage is real and it helps teams to perform better in their games or in their matches, I'm going to state the opposite. That is the null hypothesis. You are writing what you are trying to disprove. So in your research proposal, when your supervisor asks you about your null hypothesis, what they want to see is you stating the absence of an effect or a relationship. So whatever your research question is, flip it to no difference and write it in a negative way. That is your null hypothesis. So the second one is the alternative hypothesis. That's the second main type of hypothesis. So the alternative hypothesis is the opposite of your null hypothesis. So for example, in this hypothesis, it is what you believe being stated in a positive way. So if I truly believe that there is home advantage, if players play on home soil, they are likely to win or they perform better. So the hypothesis would be there is a difference in performance between teams playing on home soil and teams playing away. That means home teams perform better. So your alternative hypothesis is your actual position. That is what your entire study is designed to find evidence for. And the alternative hypothesis, it is usually the one that matches your research objective. So for example, if your research objective is to determine whether X affects Y, your alternative hypothesis would be X affects Y, while your null hypothesis will be X does not affect Y. They are always mirror images of each other. Now, there are two types of errors in hypothesis testing, and the first one is the type 1 error, and this is simply rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. So let's use the World Cup analogy. The tournament is played, all data is in, and it showed that home teams did not actually perform better than away teams. There was no any real advantage. But when you sit down to write your paper, you write that home teams actually performed better. You wrote that there was a real advantage when there was none. If you happen to do this, this is what we call a type 1 error, because you've rejected the null hypothesis that said there was no difference, because that's what your result showed, and you claimed that there was a difference, which actually did not exist. So in a research, a type 1 error means that you reported a significant finding when there was actually none. You reported that the intervention worked when your data did not actually support that. And this is why we set a significant level at 0.05 to control the probability of making this mistake. Now let's talk about the type 2 error, which is actually accepting the null hypothesis when it is actually false. This type 2 error is the opposite of the type 1 error. You are flipping the direction. Now let's see that the data actually showed that home teams performed better. It was a real advantage playing on home soil. But when you sit down to write your paper, you wrote that there was no any difference. Whether you played on home soil or not, there was no any real difference. Now that is what we call a type 2 error. Accepting the null hypothesis when it was actually false. You have missed a real difference or a real effect. So in a research, type 2 error means that you've concluded that there was no any real effect or any significant relationship when actually there was one. So these errors could be as a result of faulty research design or incomplete or incorrect data collection. It can also be as a result of a wrong statistical analysis, sampling problem, or even conclusions that overreach data. So getting your methodology right is how you protect yourself from this error. Now let's bring this home. You know what a hypothesis is. You know the two main types of hypothesis, and you know what can cause error in hypothesis testing. So if this video helped you, please like and subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who you think might need it. And also, I didn't even have a hypothesis for my undergraduate research, but if you want to see how I messed up with my methodology, everything I did wrong when I wrote my first research project, click to watch this video right here. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.